YBC Dull, Abdul Vix. West Philly rapper YBC Dull, Abdul Vix, known online as Mr. Disrespectful, appeared in a 31-minute YouTube interview with creator Brandon Buckingham that was posted on August 22, 2024. In it, Vix discussed Philadelphia gang conflicts and was filmed displaying firearms. The video quickly drew 7-figure views. The next day, August 23, Vix was shot and killed in Olney. Local reporting explicitly noted the timing the video posted a day before the homicide and said detectives were aware of the interview while stressing that motive would be determined by evidence, not speculation. Months before his death, he even sat with no jumper and truly leaned into the Mr. Disrespectful persona and discussed the viral clip of him digging up an op's grave. The interview title itself flagged the controversy. Yegdul on digging up his op's grave, being Mr. Disrespectful and more. And follow on no jumper clip posts amplified the theme, naming foes, embracing the taunt-heavy style that made him polarizing in Philly drill. Those uploads, along with other channel shorts about his name-dropping rivals, cemented the public image that local and national outlets referenced when outlining his background after he was killed. Police and prosecutors later laid out a detailed timeline of the attack. Around 3:30 p.m. on the 5500 block of North Fairhill Street, Vix was stopped behind a SEPTA bus when another car pulled alongside and fired into the driver's side, striking him in the chest and hand. He died shortly after at Einstein. Investigators said the getaway car was found burned on North 15th Street and was traced back to a teen suspect's residence. A gun recovered there was ballistically linked to this shooting and others that month. Days later, authorities released surveillance footage seeking tips. The sequence, location, ambush, burned vehicle, gun recoveries, came from charging documents and public briefings summarized by major Philly outlets. Charges followed in waves. On September 6, 2024, the DA announced counts against Aiden Waters, 16, including murder, attempted murder, and firearms offenses, tying him to multiple August shootings, one of which killed Vix. On October 23, 2024, Rashawn Williams, 18, was charged as a second suspect in Vic's death. In December 2024, police charged LaToya Donaldson, 39, the teen suspect's mother, alleging she provided the rifle used in the drive-by. Throughout, outlets emphasized that while the interview to Homicide Gap was one day, prosecutors have framed the case around forensic and surveillance evidence, rather than saying the video itself was the motive. BTB Savage. In late March 2023, Houston rapper BTB Savage, Daryl Gentry, sat down with Vlad TV and recounted in detail a prior home invasion at his apartment that he said ended in self-defense. Clips of the interview and photos he'd posted showing the blood-spattered scene circulated fast, pushing his name into national rap headlines and comment thread crossfire. Within hours, he was driving a white Mercedes near the River Oaks Chach Galleria area when another vehicle pulled alongside and opened fire. The shooting happened around 6:10 p.m. on March 30th at Mid Lane and San Felipe. Officers arrived to find Gentry fatally wounded beside the bullet-riddled sedan. Houston police told local media it appeared to be a targeted killing, and the location, a busy corridor lined with shops and mid-rise apartments, made the daytime ambush even more jarring. Investigators quickly worked license plate cameras, canvassed nearby businesses for surveillance, and pieced together a suspect vehicle trail. By April 7th, HPD publicly named Montrell Leonard Burley, 40, as wanted for murder in Gentry's death, saying at least one additional suspect was involved. Several days later, on April 11th, HPD announced Burley had surrendered and was booked into the Harris County Jail on the murder charge. Court coverage noted a 7-figure bond request and described the case as still developing with another suspect at large. Local stations and papers traced the arc from the interview clips to the roadside killing, but police statements stayed disciplined on motive, focusing instead on the ambush mechanics, suspect identification, and arrest. What defined the story was the sequence and the speed. An interview that dominated feeds, then a fatal drive-by that same day, next day, followed almost immediately by a named suspect and an arrest. That timing shaped how audiences understood the case, even as prosecutors built a conventional homicide file from video, shell casings, and witness accounts. FBG Cash. In early June 2022, Chicago rapper FBG Cash, Tristan Hamilton, sat down for a fresh on-camera interview that circulated widely in the drill community. One of the most shared uploads hit YouTube on June 5th, 2022, with Cash speaking on Chicago beefs and legacy, part scene history, part current-day commentary. 5 days later, he was dead. The tight timing between a new interview and his murder fueled the "set it on camera, paid for it in the street" narrative that often trails drill figures. Newsrooms, though, stuck to what they could verify: the dates, the route, the cars, the casings, the injuries. Police reports and local coverage put the shooting in Auburn Gresham around 5:32 a.m. on June 10, 2022, in the 1600 block of West 81st Street. Cash and a 29-year-old woman were stopped in a car when a black four-door sedan, possibly a Cadillac, rolled up. At least one gunman got out and opened fire. Other accounts describe two shooters stepping out of the Cadillac and unleashing nearly 24 rounds. Cash was struck at least 13 times and rushed to Christ Medical Center in Oak Lawn, where he was pronounced dead. The woman was hit in the arm and back and hospitalized in serious condition. Neighbors woke to shattered glass and shell markers. Reporters noted it was a residential stretch just off Ashland, with broad daylight minutes away and a school run starting soon. Coverage immediately drew a line to the city's larger feud map. FBG Cash belonged to the same camp as FBG Duck, who had been murdered downtown in 2020, but it also emphasized what investigators actually released: no public declaration of motive, no named suspect that morning, and a familiar template of a cut-off car, masked attackers, rapid fire, and escape. Stations replayed the interview links as context because audiences asked for them. But the case file the first week remained about ballistics and vehicle IDs, not sound bites. Young Mazi, God Made Me Bulletproof. In late 2016, Atlanta rapper Young Mazi, Jibril Abdul-Rahman, became internet famous for saying he had survived so many shootings that God made me bulletproof. The line followed a Deck 27, 2016 incident at a Buckhead Waffle House, where he was shot while waiting to order. Hours later, he posted the now viral boast on social media. In interviews around that period, most notably a DJ Small sit-down, he said he had been shot around 10-11 times, including once in the head, and chalked the repeated attacks up to jealousy and the attention his jewelry drew. The quote and the tally stuck to him in headlines, turning Mazi into a symbol of improbable survival long before his final shooting. On the night of August 6, 2017, less than 8 months after the Waffle House attack, Mazi was shot and killed outside Urban Pie on Hosea L. Williams Drive in the Kirkwood neighborhood, steps from Atlanta Police Zone 6. Officers at the precinct said they heard the gunfire just before 9 p.m. and ran toward the restaurant. Mazi was pronounced dead at the scene. Early reports counted 10 to 25 shots. Witnesses described a shooter fleeing on foot. The proximity to a police station, the busy summer evening, and Mazi's recent history made the killing national news within hours. Local outlets published the basic map, Hosea L. Williams at Oakview, across from Zone 6, while Wire Services and Music Press framed the story with his bulletproof line from the prior year. Coverage that week focused on scene details and Mazi's past, the Waffle House shooting, the tweet, and the older interview in which he explained why he keeps getting shot. Police described the Kirkwood case as a targeted attack and asked for tips. No immediate arrests were announced in those first days. The refrain across stories was the tragic symmetry. An artist who publicly survived double-digit shootings and then died in a barrage outside a neighborhood pizzeria. Honeycomb Brazy Alabama rapper Honeycomb Brazy, real name Nashon Terrell Jones, became one of the clearest modern examples of street beef spilling directly onto the camera. In late 2020, clips circulated of him on Instagram Live when gunfire erupted. You could literally hear shots, see him duck, and watch the chaos while the yeet stream kept rolling. He later talked about being used to it, claiming he'd been shot in the head and hit 8 times in the past. Commentary he also repeated in a post-coma live session that hip-hop outlets picked up. The effect was unmistakable. His audience literally watched an attack unfold in real time and then watched him log back on to narrate the aftermath. The gunfire didn't stop there. In June 2021, local TV and mobile reported another overnight shooting that rattled a residential block and that his mother believed targeted her, underscoring how the violence around him repeatedly splashed onto relatives and neighbors. Reporters played surveillance audio of rapid shots and interviewed residents who said they no longer felt safe on that street. By then, the Honeycomb name had become shorthand in Alabama news for viral lives, sudden shootouts, and the grim normalcy of sirens after sunset. The darkest moment came months earlier, on February 17, 2021. His grandparents, Tony, 62, and Lelia Layla Lewis, 68, were killed after gunmen fired into their Happy Hill home, sparking an explosion and fire that destroyed the house. Police and prosecutors later charged 4 men. Court testimony referenced federal wiretaps, capturing plans, and suggested the burst of gunfire ignited oxygen tanks inside, turning a shooting into a fatal blaze. Coverage also noted the alleged feud dynamics behind the plot. Multiple arrests followed. Hearings and filings laid out the timeline, with names, calls, and ballistics. Even as his own legal issues mounted, a 2024 federal gun plea and a 2025 sentence for being a felon in possession. The public story that fixed Honeycomb Brazy in memory was the camera-era sequence. Gunshots on live, attacks near family, and a double murder case in which prosecutors said the killers couldn't get to the rapper, so they went after the people who loved him. XXXTentacion, Deerfield Beach robbery killing. By mid-2018, XXXTentacion, Jahseh Onfroy, was constantly in the public eye, posting Instagram lives, giving interviews, and talking openly about mortality and threats around him. On June 18, 2018, he left Riva Motorsports in Deerfield Beach, Florida, with cash after shopping for a motorcycle. Two armed men blocked his BMW in the driveway, struggled with him at the driver's window, and shot him before fleeing with a Louis Vuitton bag containing $50,000, according to investigators and trial testimony. He was 20. Early coverage called it a possible robbery, and that framing ultimately matched what a Broward County jury concluded years later. Detectives moved quickly. Dedrick Williams was arrested 2 days later, followed by Michael Boatwright, Trayvon Newsome, and Robert Allen in the ensuing weeks. Surveillance footage, cell phone data, and witness accounts tied the group to the ambush. Prosecutors later played clips showing the men flashing wads of cash hours after the killing. In August 2022, Allen pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and robbery with a firearm and agreed to testify for the state. The remaining three went to trial in early 2023. On March 20, 2023, a jury found Boatwright, Newsome, and Williams guilty of first-degree murder and robbery with a firearm. In April 2023, a judge sentenced them to life in prison. Allen received a shorter term in May 2023 under his cooperation deal. Because X had recently spoken about death on social media, fans often linked the murder to prior statements. But the courtroom narrative stuck to robbery. The defendants blocked his car, demanded the bag, and shot him when he resisted. That is how the case is recorded in verdicts and sentencing orders. In memory, the story remains a collision of the camera era with street reality. A young star who lived online, then died in a broad daylight holdup the justice system treated as planned and predatory. The legal outcome is settled. The online aura around his last week still colors how people talk about him. Mo3 Dallas rapper Mo3, Melvin Noble, was killed on November 11, 2020, in a daytime ambush on Interstate 35E. Police said a gunman in a black car began following his vehicle. Noble pulled over, got out, and ran along the shoulder as the attacker chased him on foot and opened fire. A passing motorist was also struck, but survived. Within a month, Dallas police arrested Quan Dontrell White on a murder charge. An accompanying federal case later sent White to prison for a separate gun offense, while the state homicide case remained pending. In April 2021, a grand jury indicted Devin Maurice Brown on a murder count tied to the same attack, identifying him as a second participant in the plot. Early affidavits and charging records laid out the core sequence: vehicle pursuit, freeway stop, foot chase, and fatal shots, without assigning a public motive. The investigation expanded over the next few years. Federal filings and local coverage tracked White's 9-year sentence for possession of a firearm by a felon, imposed in November 2022, while the Dallas County murder cases moved more slowly. Then, in March 2025, the case broke open again. Fellow Dallas rapper Yella Beezy, Marquise Conway, was arrested and indicted on capital murder for remuneration, with prosecutors alleging he hired the hit that killed Mo3 and that White carried it out. Newsrooms across Texas and national wires confirmed the new charge and noted that Brown had long been indicted in the killing. Subsequent reporting set trial timelines and recapped the state's theory that money changed hands before the I-35E ambush. Beezy's lawyers entered a not guilty plea as the case moved toward court. For fans who learned about Mo3 through his melodic pain records, the legal arc has been stark. A brazen freeway killing, a first arrest, White, a second indictment, Brown, and years later, a murder-for-hire charge against a prominent peer, Beezy. Separate from the courtroom machinery, his catalog kept growing in visibility after his death, especially the posthumous lift of Outside with OG Bobby Billions, whose video arrived in March 2021 and became the morning soundtrack for many listeners. The music sustained his name. The dockets explain why it ended: a pursuit in broad daylight, gunfire on a busy Dallas artery, and an expanding set of defendants now facing judges and juries. Lil Jojo, 3 Hunakat, public taunts, and the Englewood drive-by, SEPTA 4, 2012. Chicago drill upstart Lil JoJo, Joseph Coleman, 18, pushed himself into the center of a volatile feud in 2012 by making diss records and on-camera taunts aimed at rival Black Disciples-affiliated artists. His breakout flashpoint was 300K, a response to Chief Keef's Circle that popularized the BDK chant and featured JoJo and friends flashing guns in the video. The song and its imagery became shorthand for Southside gang hostility, spilling straight into music and social media. In the run-up to his death, JoJo had been trading words with artists tied to O-Block Lamron online and in the streets. The sort of real-time escalation local media said was redefining how young Chicago rappers beefed in public. On September 4th, 2012, the tension boiled over. In the early evening, JoJo tweeted his location in Englewood, the 6900 block of South Princeton, after a day that included a film confrontation with rivals. Roughly an hour later, as daylight faded, a sedan pulled up near 70th and Princeton, and a shooter opened fire. Some reports said he was riding on the back pegs of a friend's bicycle when the car rolled alongside. Others simply placed him on Princeton Avenue when the shots rang out. He collapsed nearby and was pronounced dead soon after. The basic spine never changed in contemporaneous coverage. An Englewood drive-by, multiple rounds, and a teenager whose music and tweets had made him visible far beyond his insert. The killing ignited national coverage because the feud had been so public. Chief Keef's Twitter account posted laughing remarks that night, later disowned as a hack, which amplified anger and scrutiny from press and police. As outlets like The Guardian and NBC Chicago recapped the case, they emphasized JoJo's role in the Gangster Disciples, the opposing Black Disciples' ties of his rivals, and the way social media plus drill videos turned beef into an accelerant. The murder remains a grim early marker in drill history. An 18-year-old who dissed loudly on camera and was killed hours after broadcasting where he stood. No court has definitively closed the case with a conviction, but the timeline, public taunts, a location tweet, a drive-by in Englewood, has been documented again and again. Jay DeYoungin. In the early evening of July 27, 2022, Bogalusa police responded to a call of shot fired in the 600 block of Superior Avenue. When officers arrived, they found Javorius J. DeYoungin Scott, 24, and his father, Kenyatta Scott Sr., with gunshot wounds. The department's first alert put the time at 5:50 p.m., and its later update identified the victims by name. J. DeYoungin was taken to a local ER and did not survive, while his father was transferred and listed in stable condition. Police said a separate incident, shots fired at a vehicle about 4 miles away, was being investigated as possibly related, underscoring that more than one scene unfolded that evening. Coverage emphasized how public and recent Jay DeYoungin's media presence had been. He'd done frequent interviews and lives throughout 2022, discussing feuds, music, and legal issues that shadowed his momentum. In the days after his death, national and regional outlets aligned on the core facts. Outside his Bogalusa home, multiple rounds, a double shooting that struck both son and father, and a city dealing with follow-on police activity just hours later. The narrative spine didn't depend on rumor. It was built from the department's Facebook releases and hospital confirmations that night and the next morning. The community response was immediate. A public funeral was held at Bogalusa High School on August 7, 2022, and local TV documented lines of mourners and family statements. In write-ups that followed, reporters traced his rapid rise, regional hits from 2017 on, major label attention, and two 2022 EPs, alongside the cautionary arc that fans recognized across the South. Visibility can cut both ways. While audiences debated motive online, police kept statements tightly evidence-based, focusing on scene work, interviews, and the link between the Superior Avenue shooting and the second incident nearby. The essentials for the record remain fixed. Location and time, 2 victims, 1 fatal, father wounded, and a hometown memorial less than 2 weeks later. Facts that defined how the story was remembered, even as investigations continued. Young Pappy. By 2014-2015, Young Pappy, Shaquan Thomas, was everywhere a handheld camera could reach. Corner Q&As, hallway walk-ups, spur-of-the-moment interviews outside studios. He treated every lens like a mic, answering questions bluntly, naming rivals, and doubling down on a persona fans already heard on records like Killa, Homicide, and his snarling Finado remix. Those quick, informal sit-downs did more than promote songs. They stitched together a running commentary on neighborhood feuds, personal losses, and what he felt the city had misunderstood about him. The tone swung from joking to menacing in a breath, which made the clips travel fast and gave opponents the same unfiltered access as supporters. In a scene where visibility could be currency or crosshair, Pappy chose visibility, and the interviews kept him in the center of the frame. The street pressure matched the volume. There had already been attempts on his life, including incidents that left bystanders hurt, and confirmed to him that cameras cut both ways. In the early hours of May 29, 2015, gunmen caught him in Uptown near the 4800 block of North Kenmore Avenue. Accounts placed him on the block just before shots were fired. A dark sedan was seen leaving the area. He was hit and transported to a nearby hospital, where he was pronounced dead. The starkness of the timeline, talking into phones and camcorders one week, then a toe tag the next, was exactly why the story reverberated. Those brief interviews had made him feel present, even to people far from the north side. His murder closed the gap between the screen and the street. Afterward, the same clips became exhibits. Viewers replayed the sidewalk answers, the chest-out declarations, the moments he explained loyalty and disrespect in plain language. Friends framed the interviews as catharsis, a young artist narrating survival. Detractors said the on-camera taunts escalated things. Both readings acknowledged the same reality. The footage amplified everything. In the end, Pappy's legacy sat at that intersection. Music that hit hard, plus a trail of candid lo-fi interviews that kept his world legible to outsiders and, maybe, too easy to find for the people already looking. Da Real G Money, the sister remark, the diss, and the Dallas Drive killing. In August 2017, Baton Rouge rapper Da Real G Money, Garrett Burton, sat for a street interview and leaned into a rivalry already running hot. Asked about working with NBA YoungBoy again, he smirked and said they would never make music, and then dropped the line that stuck. He alluded to a sexual encounter with YoungBoy's sister. The clip ricocheted through local feeds and blog pages because it wasn't a bar tucked inside a song. It was said straight to camera, the kind of jab that lived on its own and could be replayed endlessly. A few weeks later, he doubled down in music, releasing Industry, YoungBoy Diss, which stacked personal shots on top of that interview moment and cemented the feud in public view. Before dawn on September 10, 2017, gunfire ended his run. Around 1:30 a.m., patrol units were called to the 1900 block of Dallas Drive, where they found G-Money shot in a parking lot. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The details were stark and familiar. A quiet hour, a quick approach, and multiple rounds before the shooters vanished. Police bulletins fixed the basics: time, location, identity, while the city argued over whether the lens had poured gasoline on a fire that was already burning. The sequence that fans remember was tight. Interview in mid-August, diss record soon after, and then the late-night homicide on Dallas Drive in early September. Years later, the case looped back into headlines when DeAndre Lil Pap Fields, long linked online to YoungBoy Circle, was arrested and charged with second-degree murder in 2019. In January 2023, he accepted a plea deal to lesser counts that carried a 5-year sentence concurrent with a separate federal gun case. The plea kept official filings focused on the killing, without turning the courtroom into a referendum on every interview or lyric from 2017. For people building the timeline, the spine stayed clear. The sister remark on camera, the diss on record, the Dallas Drive shooting, and, years later, the arrest and plea that closed a loop, but didn't rewrite how quickly words had turned into a funeral.